Hey y'all, hey, welcome back to Tylane Ducksworth Reviews. I am Tylane. All right, y'all, I am back with you guys to follow up on the topic of Diddy, Cassie, and the psychology of control. Why the verdict wasn't the end. Sorry it took me so long. I'm still recovering from being sick, girl. But anyway, I hope y'all had a marvelous holiday weekend. I hope y'all enjoyed y'all 4th, and I hope everybody is safe. And all right, y'all, as you guys can see, I just put up a little sketch, just to start off our conversation here. Let's talk about what the prosecution couldn't say out loud but needed the jury to understand. And they didn't land the way that they hoped. I'm sure what we're hearing from people that were in the courtroom, they were disappointed. Diddy beat the big charges. Everybody is saying, will Diddy be able to come back? First of all, everything in this video is alleged, okay? But I saw people like Joe Budden podcast, backpedaling and pussy popping. Several celebrities, Tiny, Candy, Shamia, liking posts in support of Diddy. Of course, the culture is angry. We're not happy with them, but anyway, that's a whole nother subject. It appears that Diddy may have beaten the big charges, but make no mistake, the damage is already done to his reputation. That is questionable because you're seeing people like backpedal. I feel like whichever side of the conversation you're on, whether you think Diddy should spend the rest of his life in jail, whether you believe that the women involved played some part in it where they need to be held accountable, whichever side of the spectrum that you're on in this whole conversation, I think things need to go back the way it used to be, where it goes through the judicial process first before everybody starts jumping on without all the facts. Don't get me wrong, it makes for good content, but at the same time, it causes a whole bunch of outrage that's unnecessary. I didn't come in the entire time through the trial. I waited for the verdict to just give my 2 cents, to be honest. I didn't want to bring that negative energy into my life, into my spirit. Now, since we have a verdict, let me be clear about this part here. Not all age gaps in relationships are grooming. But when one person holds all the money, the fame, power, access, and the other person still figuring out life, that power imbalance is the red flag. And in this case, or any case of grooming for that matter, when sex becomes the currency of survival or love, it stops being consensual and starts being compliance. I found this word when I was doing my research: adult sexual grooming. As you guys can see here on the screen, I got a little picture here. Just got some make believe luxury bags and stuff in the background here. This case wasn't just about Cassie, it is about and was about a pattern. A man with money, power, and control, and a girl barely out of high school. Now, whether if we want to say Cassie was 18, she was grown. 19, okay? Teenager. And we all know mentally your brain doesn't develop until the age of 25. She was 19 when she first was introduced to Diddy, and Diddy was 37 years old. Now, here's what a lot of people miss throughout this whole process. When a 37-year-old, 40-year-old man builds trust with a 19-year-old girl, teenager, by showering her with gifts. That's why I got the little luxury bags on there. Showering her with gifts and calling her special. That isn't love, okay? But we all are aware about love bombing. And we do know that that isn't love. That is adult sexual grooming because she was over the age of 18. She wasn't a minor. It starts with the love bombing. Then comes the sexual exploration. But it wasn't about Cassie's pleasure, it was about control. Him signing her to that 10 album deal, isolating her from her family and friends, introducing her to the freak offs, the group sex. And before she knew anything, what started out as a relationship became a trap. Now, everybody has been trying to determine, did she participate? And I hear everybody saying the prosecution didn't prove their case. I feel like the prosecution proved their case for the most part, but for me, where they messed up at was not getting I believe they did have a expert on the stand, but I don't believe that the expert, from what I've read, went into detail. A psychiatrist should have interviewed Cassie as well as Jane Doe, get an understanding of their mental capacity. It could have been better explained to the jurors because you're seeing a lot of conflicting things. There are some text messages that were introduced in court that the New York Post put out. U.S. News put this out, published back on May 17, 2025. Sean Diddy Combs text with Cassie released as disgraced mogul sex trafficking trial heads into the second week of testimonies. You guys probably are already aware of this. I've seen this somewhere, so I'm not going to go through everything. But pretty much a 162-page legal document was unsealed after the lawyers for the Bad Boy Records founder exposed years of text messages in an effort to refute allegations of abuse and depict Cassie as a consenting and willing participant in court. Okay. So a part of that document was some messages in here, you guys. A still image from the savage beating that Diddy gave Cassie at the Intercontinental Hotel. Okay. But let me go here. Let's see here. Where is it at? Now, okay. In a 2012 exchange, Combs told Ventura, yeah, I believe that's abbreviated for SHIT. So, need you to go to Doc. Cassie replied, yeah, we did a lot of DICKS, a lot of partying. Later that same year, there was a text shared between the two of them. There was a message, I miss you, from Cassie to Diddy. I miss you. I miss that DICK. I miss our love sessions in the afternoon. Diddy's attorneys, his defense team, framing this case as if Cassie knew what it was and that she was not being forced and she was not being coerced. I brought that up because I want to go back to the psychology of all of this. The mental mind that the abuse that this girl endured throughout the years would explain why she sent these messages. The psychiatrist was supposed to make the jurors understand that Cassie was coerced out of abuse being normalized for years. Some people said that they never saw anything. The one guy that got up on the stand said she ran out of the room from with Diddy and she jumped into his lap. But a psychiatrist's job in a case like this is to explain what looks consensual but really isn't. The psychiatrist was supposed to translate their years of manipulation and put it into simple language, layman's terms. Even though the jurors, eight of them, men were educated, there was the man, I believe, juror number 25, that's 51, that has a PhD. The psychologist in interviewing Cassie would have been able to look for certain behaviors: disassociation, hyper compliance, the inability to set boundaries. That's what Cassie was describing, whether people believed her or not. She wasn't recounting a wild relationship. She was describing how a predator normalized abuse for her. And that's why I feel like that the prosecution dropped the ball. I wasn't in court. I don't know. I've read the document. I didn't read all 162 pages, just like I didn't read all 35 pages of the civil suit that Cassie filed against Diddy in November of 2023. I did scan through it and just pretty much took what I needed. Pretty much this wasn't a mutual fetish. This was a long term setup where Cassie was conditioned to think that she had no choice in their relationship. When she made statements in court, she never said that she didn't want to. She kept saying things like she didn't want to make Diddy unhappy. She loved him. She didn't want him to go be with another woman. But it was mostly she didn't want to make Diddy unhappy. That's classic signs of abuse. She didn't want to make him unhappy. Not that I told him flat out, no, no, I sent him messages. I didn't want to do this anymore. But the defense kept using is that she never said flat out no. Somebody telling you that they don't want to do something anymore is no. So they was playing a lot of mind games at this trial, which that's what his defense was supposed to do. But the prosecutors should have been prepared to combat that. And that's why we have what we have now. And as we all know, Diddy was convicted 2 counts of the Mann Act for Jane and Cassie, and he was not guilty of the RICO because they did not prove the bribery, the coercion, the racketeering. They didn't prove any of that. Um, Let's see where I have it at. I had pulled it up. Give me just 1 second. Yeah, I have some notes here. I had looked up the definition of the Mann Act. Okay. The Mann Act originally was known as the White Slave Traffic Act, but it was amended in 1986 to broaden its scope to encompass the interstate transportation of individuals for any sexual activity that is punishable by law, not just prostitution. This means it no longer specifically targets white slavery or solely prostitution, but rather any illegal sexual activity facilitated. So basically, the Mann Act was created to stop men from crossing state lines to exploit women sexually. The fact that Diddy was convicted under that and not RICO doesn't make him innocent. It just makes the case harder to deny, pretty much. But that's why I said it was a psychologist's job to come in and solidify, validate, provided proof to back up what Cassie and Jane was saying, as well as interview them individually and then given a actual medical report diagnoses for what was discovered through the interview process. They didn't bother to even bring in people that work with Diddy for the last 20 years. None of that. You see all these different people doing interviews. You got Chopper, Freddie P. I know these are people that are disgruntled. Diddy didn't pay them, messed their careers up allegedly. What's the guy's name? They were Harv Pierre. There's a whole bunch of people that they could have brought in. Now, I don't know if these people are on good terms with Diddy in 2025, 2024, are bad terms. But they made this whole case specifically just about sex, and not in a way that these women was abused. They made it as if they were just in toxic relationships. They lived a swingers lifestyle and this is what they did. And oh, he was beating her ass, but that's domestic violence and the statute of limitations ran out. We not worried about that. I don't want to say the prosecutors didn't present the case, but they didn't put this case to the jury to where they would understand that they kept playing the video over and over in the courtroom. Did nobody not explain that we're playing this video to show you guys this man's character, and this woman says that she was running away from a freak off and he drug her back into the room? Isn't that kidnapping in itself by him making her come back to somewhere that she didn't want to be? Like, I don't get it. I really don't. I don't get it. But anyway, I'm gonna show you guys sex trafficking. Sex trafficking equals recruiting or maintaining someone for sex, using manipulation, not just force, benefiting from it emotionally or sexually. Diddy introducing Cassie to these freak offs, directing it like he directing a music video, and using the manipulation. Please like, comment, and subscribe. It'll be greatly appreciated. This one is not coming up. Come on. I should have screenshotted this. Sorry, y'all. There's a message I'm looking for here that were in court, that were read aloud in court, but it showed the manipulation. I think it's on this next page here because this is where she's telling him that he asked her how was her vocals going. She tells him they're good, but she has all those sores on her tongue, so it's kind of uncomfortable. And she tells him she thinks she has another UTI. Okay, anyway, y'all, I'm sorry. I cannot find it. I do apologize. Maybe I can find the article. The R&B singer, who is 8 months pregnant, spent the week in Manhattan federal court recounting in painstaking detail alleged rape, coerced sex, beatings, and other horror she endured at the hands of the embattled record producer during their on again, off again relationship between 2007 2018. The daily check ins and the former couple expressing affection for each other. Others detailed the conversations about sex while parties and intimate fantasies. It's just the way that things were worded in the media, the way things were worded in the courtroom, as if this was just some toxic relationship. And that's not, yeah, the relationship was toxic, 1000%. But that's not what this was. It was coercion. It was about bribery. It was about control. Hell, kidnapping, dragging, forcing somebody to go somewhere against their will. That falls under the racketeering. Let me find a picture of something just to put up here while I go through some other stuff here, you guys. I mean, this is just looking through here to see if there was something else I missed. Yeah, this right here. I should have read the whole article, y'all. Sorry about that. So pretty much Combs once texted Ventura to have fun, impressed me when she was on her way to a sex shop to get supplies for a freak off. Jurors learned the court also saw messages between the couple sent on May 26, 2017, near the end of their relationship about her run to a sex shop called the Pleasure Chest. Ventura testified that when she went to the X rated store, she would get different sexual supplies, lubricants, outfits. Ventura previously testified that she participated in the freak offs to please Combs and because she wanted to avoid his anger, which often resulted in him beating her. This makes absolutely no sense, y'all. This makes no sense. Even the fact that they didn't realize that he was using them to be the middle person. So it's looking like they paid for the escorts. They made the phone calls to set everything up. They set everything up at the hotels. That whole process was manipulation. And how the prosecution and a psychiatrist couldn't make and including the testimonies couldn't make the jurors see this is beyond me. Diddy paying escorts to sleep with her, but having her be the person to exchange the money, pressuring her to participate. And he got off on that. Control, that power. That's legally sex trafficking, whether she smiled through it or not. Like the fact that the defense Agnifilio said that this was a modern day love story. It's a modern day nightmare. What the hell is you talking about? Yeah, but here's the twist where that very logic worked against the prosecution. Let's not forget how long this man allegedly paid to silence people. And then you got people looking at the fact that, she settled for $30 million. That's what everybody's looking at. Everybody's focused on the fact that she got money. I know we've all heard the saying, pay me for my pain. Because in this situation, they went through this whole court process. Cassie got on the stand and talked about things that most people should want to take to their graves. Honestly, that most people would take to their graves. The embarrassment, the things that she discussed, the UTIs, the sores in her mouth, all of this stuff that she had to talk about. Things that I'm sure she didn't want her mom to hear, her dad to hear, her husband to hear. She had to get up there and humiliate herself. And Diddy was not charged for the most heinous things that he did to her. It was about the fact that these prostitutes were paid to have sex with them. But the illegalness was the sex and the payment of paying the prostitutes. And it just seems like, I hate to say this, which I don't know, but it seems like that this was a scenario where Cassie and Jane could have been used because they were the ones, the go between. They were setting up the hotels, they were doing the money exchange. They could have been, my mouth is dry, y'all, sorry. Could they have been charged as co conspirators? So I'm almost positive, which I don't know for sure because I wasn't there, that it's likely, highly likely, from what everybody was saying, all the people that was testifying didn't want to be there. So was the situation to where is that the prosecution put them in a position of either you testify and then you get immunity if you throw him under the bus, which he deserves it. I'm not saying that but we'll charge you guys unless you guys talk, pretty much. Another thing is that when this lawsuit first came out, people always say, just because somebody pay off a lawsuit doesn't mean that they're guilty. Now we all heard the rumors throughout the years. No, none of us had proof. Nobody had facts. Even once Cassie filed that civil suit, people didn't believe Cassie. Everybody kept, excuse me, kept saying it's a money grab until that video came out. Now most of us, we knew what it was, but a lot of people didn't. First, it was a money grab. Then once the video came out, oh well, he did domestic violence. That don't mean he did everything else. It's just changing the goalposts, each and everything that comes out. Then it went from, oh well, look at the messages that she sent him. And I'm hearing people saying, well, everything can't be Stockholm. Do y'all not realize that if you have Stockholm syndrome, PTSD, you've been mentally abused like that, you don't function like a person that has not been abused. The way that I'm hearing people speak about Cassie, they're speaking about her as if she is not an abuse survivor, which means that Cassie messed up. Cassie probably take depression medicine, anxiety medicine, all kind of medicines, allegedly, for everything that she's been through. She probably going, I'm pretty sure she's going to therapy on a regular basis, all kind of natural remedies, exercise, and anything to help. And for her to be able to recall all of that in court, that all of this stuff is very vivid and fresh in her mind, and having to relive this is reliving that trauma, going through this all over again. Now, if Cassie, let's say, okay, so if the abuse wasn't involved, then we could say that, okay, she knew what she was doing. She made them decisions. She stayed in the situation. She was living a lifestyle, blah, blah, blah. But because abuse entered this situation, everything else is off the table because of the abuse. We all know somebody that has been battered, especially in our culture, in our community. I believe there's a statistic, I'd have to look it up, that one in every five women, I'm just giving an example, that may not be it. Every family in the black community, there's somebody in the family that has been in an abusive relationship or that has been sexually molested or assaulted. Now, Cassie is not, I believe she has some Afro heritage in her, but I'm not calling Cassie a black woman. When I'm talking about our community, I'm talking about our culture, the way that everybody's reacting to this. Diddy is a black man, and more often than not in our community, it is a black man, a uncle, a family friend, a stepdaddy, a cousin, a brother that are committing these acts of sexual abuse to the women in their families. People automatically thought in their mind, you don't settle for $30 million if you're proud of your past. And if you were falsely accused, you would fight it in court, not with hush money. What happened, because Cassie's lawyer came out and said that Diddy, he said, which I don't know, but the lawyer was saying, I just saw it. Hold on, let me see if I can pull it up. Hold on, y'all. I'm going to just see if I can pull it up real quick, you guys. It was an interview with Cassie's lawyer, and he was on with, I don't know what's the lady's name. I'm trying to find this video. It was on CNN, but this is like 30 minutes, so I'm not going to go through all this. Let me see if I can find
Doug,
the part I want you guys to listen to.
Inside of that courtroom when this verdict was read. This has been something that you have been representing Cassie Ventura for well over a year. A lot at stake here. Yes, for Sean Combs, but for Cassie Ventura. What were you feeling when you were inside that courtroom?
Well, I think there was a lot of mixed emotions in the courtroom, generally speaking. Obviously, we would have liked to have seen convictions on the RICO charges and the sex trafficking charges, but Cassie prompted this investigation by the Southern District, and now Sean Combs stands before the court as a convicted felon of 2 federal crimes. He faces significant incarceration. Not the exact outcome that we wanted, but we are grateful to the jury for finding a guilty verdict on those 2 federal crimes.
I want to get back to what you were just talking about, but first I have to ask you, have you had the chance to speak with Cassie?
I have, yes. I had an opportunity to speak with her, as did the government prosecution team. She's of the same view. Back in November of 2023, Cassie had a choice. She could accept an 8-figure settlement offer and move on with her life and sign non-disclosure agreements, or she could file a civil lawsuit and hold Sean Combs responsible for what he did to her and shine a light on his behavior. She showed great courage, great bravery to choose the latter of those 2 options. She turned away the money at first. Ultimately, the case settled the day after. And she went through a year-long process of preparing for this trial. I thought, and I think people who saw her testify, she was a great witness. She was graceful. She shined a light on this. Jane read the complaint. She came forward. Many other people have come forward, are going to be seeking to hold Sean Combs responsible in the civil courts. And it's not all lost. He's now, as I said, he's never been held responsible for anything in his lifetime. He was acquitted on charges when he was in New York with a gun case, and now he is a 2-time convicted felon, 2 federal charges. The government indicated after the jury verdict was read that they're going to be seeking consecutive terms and they're going to be seeking lengthy prison incarceration. And so Cassie was comforted in knowing that Not only has she played a role in the criminal prosecution, but that she has shined a light on this behavior by Sean Combs, and many other people have come forward, not only about him, but about other people in the entertainment world as well.
Now, I want to go back to something you said, which is when she filed that civil suit in November 2023, that
Okay, you guys, that's a CNN interview exclusive. Cassie Ventura's lawyer reacts to Diddy verdict. This is from 4 days ago, and he was interviewing with Elizabeth Wagmeister, or I don't want to butcher her name. I believe it's Wagmeister. But I'm going to listen to a little bit more of this, guys, and then I'm going to get back into the rest of my commentary. But it's something else she's going to say in here.
this is really what started it all. And it really is in the civil sense, but also in the criminal sense. In this trial, and I was in the courtroom for most of the days, we heard both the defense and the prosecution say that this investigation, this federal investigation, began because of Cassie Ventura. How does that weigh on her to realize that Sean Combs would not have even been in a courtroom if not for her?
Well, I think it's given her some agency in life where for 10 years he told her what had to be done and she had no choice. This was her ability to say, no, I'm not going to accept this 8-figure settlement. I'm going to file this lawsuit. And that's what she did. And so she is really gratified in knowing that other people have come out since the filing of the civil lawsuit. And that you're correct as far as I know. There was no pending investigation into Sean Combs prior to her filing the civil lawsuit. We were contacted very soon after we filed, and this investigation ensued. And you know, the prosecution team, I thought did an excellent job. Again, not the outcome I'm sure that they wanted. They didn't get the top counts, but they at least were able to secure 2 convictions of 2 federal felony charges.
Now, you mentioned the settlement, which, as you are saying right here, that Cassie had 2 choices, which was take the money, sign an NDA, or file a civil suit. She chose to file the civil suit. Now, she did reach a settlement within 24 hours. It was very quick, but this was after she filed the civil suit, after all of her bombshell allegations were out in the world. And yet, in this trial, the defense seized on money, not just for Cassie, but also for Jane. The defense, and this is not a direct quote, I'm summarizing, but Mark Agnifilo, in his closing, he said, Cassie Ventura is the winner here. He called her the winner. He said she's sitting somewhere in the world with $30 million. She's not naive like the prosecutors are telling you. She knew exactly what she was doing, and she's the winner. How did that make you feel and her feel to use the word winner when the jury and the world, by the way, has seen her being horrifically beaten on camera?
Yeah, I mean, thanks to your great reporting and the video that saw the light of day, obviously Cassie Ventura at that point in time and today is not the winner. You know, she endured 10 years of abuse where she had to engage in days-long sexual acts with UTIs. She alleged that she was raped. And so to call her a winner, even though she did get $30 million, part from, as she testified, part from Sean Combs, part from the hotel, no amount of money is going to ever undo what she had to endure.
Oh, alrighty, y'all. That's all I needed. I did not mean to put that up. So really quickly here, the reason I brought that up is to point out, like he was saying, with the $30 million settlement. So initially, he's saying that Cassie turned down the settlement. So it's kind of confusing because he said they filed the suit where she was offered money. She turned it down, filed the suit, and then after the suit was filed, Diddy came back and ended up settling anyway. So I guess from what I'm getting is that they must have met up to talk, and then she decided that no, she didn't want the money. From what her attorney is saying, she didn't want the money. She decided to file the suit, but after she filed the suit, they ended up paying her anyway. That's why we were trying to figure out, like, what was the point of paying her if the suit came out? Because everything is out here now, which is what the public believes, and from what he's just saying, that's what triggered the feds because of the suit. You okay, mama? I'm sorry, y'all, talking to my dog. Sorry about that. She was asleep. You better stop that. Anyway, like I was saying, I just pulled up another article that I just saw popped up actually on the 3rd, but today is the 7th. But I just want to go through some of that because it goes back into the psychological abuse that I was speaking of. But before I do that, I'm going to jump into really quickly here sentencing, and then I'll go back to that, and then we'll be wrapping up. I just have some commentary left. That explains everything about the whole. We were trying to figure out why Diddy waited to pay. That's what everybody kept saying. With this kind of stuff that was going to put you in prison for life, why would you let this suit get put out? Why didn't you just pay the money? And then you turned around and paid the money the next day within 24 hours. Hell, it wasn't even within 24 hours. So the lawyer just explained what happened with that. Now let's talk about sentencing, guys, because this is where it gets really tricky. Diddy did beat the most serious charges, but Diddy is still facing federal time under the Mann Act. We've seen this before, a powerful black man dragged publicly while the enablers go untouched. Okay? And when I say stuff like that, I'm speaking of it was alleged that Diddy himself may have been groomed by another gentleman in the industry. But I'm not going to say the name because I'm not finna get into all that. But it has been alleged that Diddy himself may have been turned out. Okay? Allegedly. So let's not pretend that Diddy acted alone. There were lawyers, executives, assistants, bodyguards. They knew, they saw, and they looked away. Nobody did anything. And that's why it really pissed me off that you saw all these people, Gene Deal, Roger Bonds, coming out now doing Vlad interviews. You guys are just as responsible that you sat back and watched this happen and didn't say anything. Y'all just as guilty. So that's what I mean by it should have been a whole bunch of people. If they were going to prove this RICO, it should have been a whole bunch of people that should have been subpoenaed to testify and even given charges themselves as well. Because y'all sat back and y'all saw this happen. There are interviews on YouTube with these people saying, I was Diddy's bodyguard. I saw this happening. And you didn't say anything. They should have been forced to testify to prove this RICO. And none of that was done. None of the people that we have been seeing talking for the last 2, 3 years on the internet and longer about Diddy, none of those people were in a courtroom to testify. And they still out here doing interviews. I mean, the courtroom only had one defendant, and that was Diddy. And now the judge has to weigh not just what he did, but what message is going to send. And most people think that Diddy gonna get a slap on the wrist. I don't believe that. I believe that the judge is going to give Diddy the harshest punishment under the law that he can give to him. Too many times you're hearing people saying that Diddy has gotten away with things, he's never been held accountable. As we all know, the jurors were not sequestered, but there is no way. This story was the biggest story in the world for the last year and a half. There is no way these people didn't hear about any of this. But yeah, I don't believe that this is the end of this. I really don't. The judge cannot punish Diddy for what he wasn't convicted of, but he can consider the totality of this entire situation. That means the headlines, the outcry from the public, the accusations, all of that can be considered. Now, they can give Diddy the max, not because he's guilty of everything, but because the culture is screaming somebody needs to pay. Everybody is questioning, how did this happen? The evidence is there, is self-explanatory, but for some reason the jurors didn't read this the same way as everybody else. You have so many people saying that Diddy has messed over so many people over the years, and there is no way the judge is not hearing. I mean, he was off this weekend. You don't think the judge saw no YouTube videos of everything that everybody is saying? You don't think the judge watched CNN and Fox News and News Nation and all that? You don't think that the judge don't watch things like that? Like I said, the culture is screaming that justice needs to be served. Right now, everybody is feeling like that the justice system did not work for the victims in this case. And right now, that's someone that everybody wants to pay is Sean Diddy Puffy Brother Love Combs. Okay? So here's the question, y'all. Was justice served, or was this a symbolic slap to calm the public? Symbolic justice is when a guilty person gets a life sentence just enough to save face. Do y'all think this was real justice? Accountability across the board. Cassie spoke. Jane Doe spoke. Jane 2 was, I believe, the girl Mia, but everybody said she lied the whole time. I don't know. You have people yelling from the roof, from the mountaintop. Even that girl I said in my last video, Aubrey O'Day. You said that you knew all of this stuff for 20 years. Why wasn't she called to testify? But would they have made her look the same way they made Don look? You know? There was one of the jurors, he was alternate, he was on with Laura Coates the other day. And he said when the defense was cross-examining Don, it was like watching a takedown. Is that why Aubrey didn't like? But my whole thing is that Aubrey O'Day has been going everywhere during doing interview after interview after interview, but you wasn't in court. Everybody wants to think that Cassie did some horrible things. Cassie was involved. Cassie was abused. Her actions was the actions of an abuse victim, not the actions of somebody that was just in a toxic relation. A toxic relationship is, y'all cussing each other out. You know, that's a toxic relationship. Being disrespectful to one another. That's toxic. Not beating the hell out of somebody. But really quickly before I wrap this up, y'all, this I want to look at this article. This popped up from who is this? USA Today. A Cassie consent to Diddy when it comes to abuse. There can't be consent. A New York jury believed Cassandra Ventura Fine had consented to an escort urinating in her mouth, to an inflatable pool of baby oil, to sex with strangers. In the end, the jury found her then boyfriend, Sean Diddy Combs, not guilty of coercing her into freak off sex sessions with escorts. Combs was only guilty of transporting her and another woman, known only as Jane, for prostitution. The defense version of events had prevailed. By Diddy's attorney's own admission, Combs was an abuser with an out of control temper, but this was also a lifestyle. That's what they turned this into. Neither of the things he was on trial for, but can someone ever really freely consent when there is abuse? When does consent become survival? What if a yes, last time a victim said no, they were met with a punch to the face? And that's what happened in this scenario. Ventura Fine had testified that at times she told Combs what he wanted to hear, that she looked forward to the freak-offs because he had abused her and she was afraid of him. Victims know what their partner is capable of, and consent may be made under duress, says Katie Ray Jones, CEO of the National Domestic Violence Hotline. That should not be considered consent. With abuse, there never can be consent. Victims and advocates say there always is an invisible gun to your head. Trauma bonding with abusers. They told her, she kept coming back for 11 years. Combs' attorney, Teeny Garagos, said during the trial. Ventura Fine paused. I wouldn't use coming back, she said. If you don't fight back, are you giving consent? It was the central question in two of the charges in this case, and the question pivotal to many sex abuse cases. Ventura Fine was at the now shuttered Intercontinental Hotel in Los Angeles with Combs in 2016 for a freak off when he hit her. When she tried to leave, he ran after her into a hallway. She curled up into a ball to try and protect herself. Combs pushed her to the ground, pulled her by the hair, and dragged her and kicked her. She didn't fight back. She had done so earlier in the relationship. It would make it worse for myself, she said. Fighting back would make Combs stronger and want to push me harder. While the video was shown to the jury, the defense contends it simply shows abuse, not coercion. They didn't see her being dragged back into the room. Like, what is happening here? Judge Aaron Subramanian ruled that psychologist Don Hughes was not allowed to discuss coercive control. Why? This makes no. You lying to me? This is crazy. And that's why people are saying that this was a humiliation ritual. Why would the judge not want the psychologist? I just finished saying that they needed a psychologist to explain to the jury what happened. Why was she behaving this way? Why was Cassie messaging Diddy saying she wanted to do freak offs? Judge Aaron Subramanian ruled that psychologist Don Hughes was not allowed to discuss coercive control, which is a type of domestic abuse. She was, however, allowed to discuss coping strategies for victims and explain why victims may, stay in abusive or violent relationships. Victims can form trauma bonds with their abusers, she testified. Hughes compared trauma bonding to a slot machine. Someone knows they're going to lose most of the time. But when you strike gold, it feels good and you're always chasing that feeling. So victims are often trying to chase those nice moments with an abusive partner. They're making this sound as if she enjoyed doing this. She continued. That's what this example is given. Girl, none of this don't make no sense. I'm sorry. I'm not no attorney, but this doesn't make any sense at all. Sometimes survival can simply mean keeping yourself safe, and that might be staying in an abusive relationship. Ray Jones said it shouldn't be confused with consent. She basically gave the minimal, the psychologist was allowed to give the minimum to the jury and not go into detail, not interview these women, not give an not prepare an assessment and share that with the jurors. All right, y'all. So, lastly, this is still a part of the article with USA Today. Ventura fined met Combs when she was 19 and he was 37. He controlled her career, her finances. She learned that saying no or pushing back from abuse was met with more abuse. At one point, Combs demanded money from her parents or he would release a sex tape. He forced her to carry his handgun. That was the episode where somebody came in and said they saw Suge. He had her put the gun in her purse and made her come with him to go out looking for Suge in the middle of the night, allegedly. Whatever was going to not make him angry or threaten me, I was going to do, she testified. And do sometimes staying is the only option a victim can see. People undervalue how much strength and courage it takes to get out, and that means the strength and courage victims have every single day when they're living in an abusive or controlling relationship just to stay alive. There is so much difficulty in just survival, so much strength. All right, y'all. So that's all I'm gonna go through on it. I'm not gonna go through that whole article, but this makes no sense at all. That's what I was saying. What was the point of having a psychologist there if they were not going to do the job thoroughly and go into detail about Stockholm and mental abuse and physical abuse and the toll that it can take on a person and how a person can feel helpless when he controlled they just her career, her finances. Everybody around her was afraid of him and everybody else just sat there and watched and then went to console her after the fact. KK. This is ridiculous. Anyway, the version of Diddy we knew, the untouchable mogul, he's finished and honestly, it's long overdue. If he's serious about change, Diddy needs to start by making things right. Like I said in my last video, by helping Craig Mack's family, Black Rob's family, and their legacy, and any other artists that he left in the dust. Okay? Honestly, I'm not gonna hold my breath. This is ridiculous. So y'all don't get it twisted. Diddy's downfall isn't over. There are still civil suits pending. I believe allegedly they said it was like 60 to 70 lawsuits and like $55 million that he may have to pay out. And the moment the industry decides that Diddy is more a liability than legacy, they'll cut ties with him. He never existed as well. But nah, if Diddy really truly wants real redemption, that means accountability, not PR apologies like that bullshit apology he gave us sitting in that sauna, what have you, talking about he was messed up, and then we find out that even while he was under investigation, he was fighting with Jane Doe. Where was the support for Cassie before she settled? The people that was at the parties, and I'm not talking about the parties that everybody went to. I'm talking about the bodyguards, people like that that knew what was going, people that was in his inner circle in his camp that knew what was going on, that seen this happen. I mean, the people that was on the jets, all of these people. It seems in hip hop we love to crown kings in hip hop until they skeletons come out. Then once they skeletons come out the closet, everybody want to make excuses for them. Y'all, we want moguls, not monsters. Like this, like, and we're finding out that sometimes our moguls are our monsters. We cannot keep saying protect black women and protect women in general. And then when women speak out against famous black men, we want to point out all the imperfections of the women. Now, true enough, Cassie wasn't perfect, but at the minimum, she deserved to be believed. And it took people to have to see that doggone horrendous savage tape that CNN leaked, or that came out on CNN, for people to actually believe that Diddy is this monster that everybody had been talking about, this monster in the dark that people had been talking about for decades. And then they finally got to see that this person is actually a monster. But then people are still picking this girl apart. And they're not treating her as if she's an abuse victim. They treated her as if, oh, my daughter wouldn't put up with that. My sister wouldn't put up with that. I wouldn't put up with that. Yeah, if they not getting their ass whooped, then yeah, it's easier to walk away. But if somebody has taken your independence away from you and holding and dangling this carrot over your head, I don't know what y'all expect from women sometimes. I really don't, most of the time. Like, this is crazy. So, can you imagine years of control that rewired this girl's brain? She was 19 when she got with him. So, he groomed her into this. She said they were 22 when they first were intimate with each other. So, that means at that time she was 22 and Diddy was 40 years old. And y'all don't believe that he had control over her. Now, yeah, at the end of the relationship, I'm pretty sure by that point, if she still was with Diddy now, then we could say, okay, now you a grown woman. At some point you had to, and I even was questioning myself at one point. I was like, at some point Cass has to take accountability. And then I had to think about it. And I started researching the people that have been abused and things that people have been through. Like, it's not easy to just get out of stuff like that. It's not easy. Statistically, they say women will go back to a domestic violence relationship 7, 8 times before they actually leave. Like, leave for good. And this wasn't just domestic violence. This was sexual abuse. There were allegations of rape that were said in court. Victims, all right, Bella, I'm coming. Victims don't just heal because the abuse is convicted. They live with triggers, shame, broken trust. And everybody was saying, it's her husband, her pimp. In order for them to be in a healthy marriage and relationship, he has to be a person that has himself together to be able to manage the issues that Cassie is dealing with. Y'all don't realize what this girl is living with and going through from day to day. And yes, she deserved 30 million. Hell, she deserved $50 million. That's the part, the triggers, the shame, the broken trust, her reliving this trauma. That's the part that the courts, they don't fix that. I don't believe that prison is that it rehabilitates people. I really don't. I was one of them people where I'm like, I don't be wanting to see nobody go to prison. I really, really don't. But when you do things like this, I've always say when you commit unaliving somebody, forcing somebody to do something against their will, messing with children inappropriately, anything like that, throw away the key. I'm sorry. And I'm not sorry. So, y'all, we should be talking about therapy, about healing, about the communities that protect predators while shaming survivors. We have to stop. We like we need to have a meeting. Like, there needs to be some kind of meeting about, and start looking at these people. Like, I don't freak out and fan out about celebrities. It's like they just have money and they in a higher tax bracket. But I'm like, hey, and bye. I never have. You feel what I'm saying? Like, you just a regular person. You just got money and access and fame and you on TV or what have you. So when people sit up and say, oh, I don't believe such and such did this, you don't know these people. So that's why you cannot 100% say that they actually did this and they didn't do it. Like I said, I didn't speak on this situation until after what was heard in the trial. Because now I have something to back up what I'm commenting on and what I'm giving my opinion on. And I feel like that if you're going to do this, you need to be able to do this and be unbiased. But when it comes to situations like this for women, it's hard to be unbiased when things like this keeps happening over and over and over again. So you automatically come out anytime you hear another claim, you come out in attack mode. Like, I don't want to hear this. Enough is enough, because we're seeing that in our community, we are condoning and protecting our moguls for the image that they're putting out to the public, but behind the scenes, they are some low down, dirty scoundrel, in the words of Alan Van Zant, just pure, just gutter snipe behavior. This is ridiculous. Anyway, y'all, the verdict is complicated. Diddy is convicted but not locked up, acquitted but not innocent, and now the judge holds the power. So what now? Honestly, Diddy's fate is in the judge's hands. but our culture, that's in ours. And what we allow, y'all, what we excuse, the things that we scroll past, it shapes who gets protected. You know, you see people where you even see people on podcasts and different things. If it's somebody that they like, they not gonna go that far. Even if the person did something wrong. But if it's somebody that they don't like, they don't have to know any of the information. They gonna drag that person, they gonna speak about it as if they know what is being said is truth and facts. But when it's somebody that they know, they gonna sugarcoat it and try to fix it up and fix it in this little box to make it fit the narrative that's in their head. I don't know, y'all. We got to make a change. If not, the children are doomed. Whitney Houston talked about rest in peace. The children are the future. It was our generation that are responsible for these children. And that's what we need to be focusing on. Instead of protecting people that probably wouldn't piss on us if we was on fire. I mean, you just saying it in general. And I'm going to get off of here. But anyway, y'all, let me just get back to the end, the Diddy of it all, y'all. Do y'all think Diddy's sentencing will be fair? Will they make an example out of him? I believe they will. So we just going to have to wait and see. I'm Tylane Ducksworth, and over here, y'all, I like to keep it real. You know, I've been doing this for probably about 3 months, but reviews, reactions, I'll always cover the truth to the best of my ability. I'll always be honest and cover the truth. And if I ever make a mistake, I'll always be upfront with you guys. If this video resonated with you, please like, subscribe to the channel, and drop y'all thoughts in the comments, whether good or bad. I'm not finna go back and forth with nobody and stuff like that. That's not my cup of tea. Drop your thoughts, tell me how y'all feel, how y'all like the video, how y'all liking the channel so far. And as always, y'all stay safe. Till next time, it's Tylane with Tylane Ducksworth Reviews, and I'm out. Take care.